In this Photoshop tutorial, we're going to deep etch the helicopter out of its background, and we're going to stick it into this image here, just composite it in on another layer. The technique we're going to use is called Quickmask. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off by grabbing hold of the lasso tool, or the polygon lasso tool will do the same job, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to roughly draw around the outside of this helicopter. Not really too fussed about being very accurate at the moment. And I've got a selection. All these dotted lines here indicate the selection, what's commonly referred to as the marching ants. And if I ever need to deselect this, it's Command D on my keyboard, or I can go up here and I can go deselect. Not going to do that at the moment, because what I want to show you is modifying this selection to fit the shape of the helicopter. I'm going to type Q on my keyboard, just Q by itself, no other keys, and it brings up this thing which is called a Quickmask. If you ever need to change the colour of the Quickmask, just go down here underneath the colours in your toolbox and double click on this little icon here. It's the Quickmask icon, and double click on that fairly quickly and you can actually change the colour of the Quickmask. So obviously if you were doing a red sports car, you don't want to have a red Quickmask. So I've just go on and change that to yellow. If I click OK, I can also change the opacity, and then if I type Q again, my Quickmask has suddenly gone yellow. So whatever colour you like to work with, that's how you change it, just over here in the little Quickmask icon. So yellow will be fine for the moment. Notice when I turn Quickmask off again by typing Q, back to the selection with the marching ants, whatever colours I had in my toolbox, which are currently foreground colour of yellow and background colour of blue, as soon as I type Q and get into Quickmask, those colours change to black and white, because they're the only colours that you can have when you're using Quickmask. I'm just going to grab a brush. I'm going to go B on the keyboard to pick up a brush, which is here. Brush tool, B is the keyboard shortcut for that. I'm going to get a larger brush, so I'm going to do a right mouse button click and just drag out that size a little bit bigger. Probably leave the hardness about 85%. And I've got myself a bigger brush. Now when I click, it's painting in some yellow bits. And let's put one there so you can see what will happen when I type Q. You'll notice that the selection has been altered. Let's type Q again. I'm painting with black and it's adding more yellow. If I flick my colours over, just use the little double-headed arrow here, or I can type X on my keyboard. If I keep typing X, it just flicks foreground to background. This time I want to paint with white, and it'll actually remove some of the yellow, like this kind of thing. And if I type Q on my keyboard, then you can see what it's done with the selection. It's altered that quite considerably. Let's type Q again, and the idea is I want to paint back as much yellow as I can around the helicopter. So I'm going to type X on my keyboard to make sure I have black as my foreground colour, and I'm just going to start painting all this stuff back in and change that selection somewhat. Now I'm going to start off on this rotor blade here, so I'm going to go Z for zoom. It brings up the magnifying glass, and I'm just going to zoom in here like so, and push the space bar to move the image around a bit. B for brush. Let's have a smaller brush. I'm going to use the braces key next to the letter P on my keyboard to make the brush diameter smaller. If I use the other brace key on the right hand side, it'll make it bigger, but I want to go smaller, so I'm using the brace key right next to the letter P and make that a bit smaller. So what I'm doing, I'm going to go around the edge. I'm going to hold down the shift key because I want to draw a straight line, and I've clicked on a point at the tip of the rotor blade, hold down the shift key, and it draws a straight line. I'm going to do that a few times, maybe get a bigger diameter brush. And just come back a bit. Looks like there's a little bit I missed right next to the rotor blade. Go around the other side, do the top, and keep doing it like that. Let's make that brush a little bit bigger and may be a bit harder. 100%. I'm just going to fill in this area here. Tip of the blade, work my way right around. Click to establish a point, hold the shift key down and draw a straight line. Get to that. Let's click in here. So if I zoom right out and go, by going Command 0, you can see that I've started to make progress on this rotor blade here. Type Q and you can see what it's done to the selection. So I'm going to work my way right around this helicopter, and I'll just pause the video for a while because it's going to take me quite a while. Okay, so I've worked my way around a bit more of the helicopter. I've done the rotor blade up here at the top and some of the underbody of the tail boom. Just zoom in here and you can see what I've done. I've gone around with a fairly thin kind of brush, and then what I do is make the brush a bit bigger and fill in all these other areas. It's a lot easier going around the first time with a thin brush and then coming back with a thicker brush. Don't use a thick brush to do the whole lot at the start, it's just too difficult. So just make that a bit thicker and then paint out all this sort of stuff. Just working my way right around the helicopter. Let's go back up to the rotor hub here because there's lots of small fiddly bits, and I'll show you a good way to do that. Just going to make a smaller brush here at the moment and perhaps zoom in a little bit more. Z for zoom on the keyboard brings up the magnifying glass, and we'll just zoom in a bit. B for brush, and we're still painting with black, which leaves behind the actual Quickmask, which is yellow in this case. So what I need to do is to get in here, so I'm just going to make a smaller brush and I'm going to paint in some yellow. And there's a couple of bits of the actual rotor assembly that I want to keep and not get rid of. I've just painted yellow over the top, and if I type Q on the keyboard it brings up the selection. Just want to modify that a bit more, so type Q again. I'm going to paint with white this time by clicking X on my keyboard, and that'll flick the foreground colour to white, and I can just click and get rid of some of this yellow. So anytime I want to get rid of yellow like that at the top there, that's what white does. But anyway, let's paint it back in some more black. So type X, so I'm painting with black. These little bits of blue sky in the rotor hub here, I'm just going to paint them as yellow, or paint them as Quickmask, which is coloured yellow at the moment. Doing this sort of stuff. Let's get in underneath here. I've got a small brush, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Hold down the shift key if you want to draw a straight line. Around there like that. I'll use a bigger brush to come back and fill that in a moment. These little bits here, these push rods, what I want to do is, they've got some pretty sharp angles on them, and I can do that with a round brush, believe it or not. So what I do is I start at a point down here. I've painted inside the body a little bit, and I'll click up here, hold down the shift key and it draws a straight line. Then what I do, just to get that sharp angle, I'm going to type X on the keyboard, so I'm painting with white, and do that, paint the yellow out. Go back to the body down the bottom here and paint the yellow out. I've got myself quite a sharp angle. Let's do the same in here, type X on the keyboard, and I'm actually just going to paint all this yellow going over that push rod. I'll come back and fix that in a moment. Let's just fill this stuff in with Quickmask. Down here, shift key, draw a vertical line into the body area. Out here again. Just going to fill that stuff in. Now to fix this push rod, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the left brace key near the letter P and make the brush diameter about the same thickness as that push rod. And then I'm going to make sure I'm painting with white, so I type X or click the double-headed arrow. I'm going to just click the top of the push rod there, and then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the push rod, hold down the shift key and click, and it'll draw a straight line along that push rod. Get rid of that little bit of yellow in there. So that's how I can do these intricate parts. There's another bit there. I'll just paint that yellow out so I've got a hard angle on that corner. Up the top here I need to paint out some more of the sky, so I'm going to click X on the keyboard, so I'm painting with black, and just go over here. Let's make this brush a bit bigger. Right brace key near the letter P, just clicking, hold down the shift key and work our way around this dome bit on the top of the rotor head. Some more intricate details in here. Again, I'm just going to paint right over this pushrod area, painting black in here so it's revealing the Quickmask, which is coloured yellow. And down here, around that little bit of the rotor assembly and down into the body and across. And then all I've got to do is paint the push rods back in. So again, make a smaller diameter brush that matches the thickness of the push rods. Let's paint with white, so type X on the keyboard so our colours are flicked over, so white is the foreground colour. Click the top of the mouse near the top of the push rod, hold down the shift key because we're going to draw a straight line, and go right down to the bottom of that push rod, and we've got ourselves a straight line. Same with this one here. Click at the top, hold down the shift key and do that. Let's type Q on the keyboard to have a look at our selection, and you can see that those push rods are now selected. Type Q again and keep painting with black until we get right around the helicopter, and I'll just pause the video and pick up later on. Okay, I've unpaused the video recording, and this is the progress so far. Just a little bit more to do on the top rotor, and a little bit of a clean up under some of the antenna underneath the fuselage. So just pause again and I'll finish off the rotor. Alright, just about done. Let's just zoom in and fix these last little bits. There's a strut here that needs to have the yellow removed from it. If I type Q on Quickmask, you can see I haven't quite got that that strut. So let's paint in using white. B for brush, nice thin brush. Gonna click a start point, hold down the shift key at the end of that strut, and it paints that strut back in. Type X to paint black, bigger brush. Just keep backfilling all this stuff here and fill in the gaps. Don't forget to save your work. I've saved this as helicopterquickmask.psd, so it's a layered Photoshop file. Command S will just save that last little change. If you have a look in the channels palette, I've got layers open here. Let's click on channels. You'll actually see that the Quickmask is in here. We've got red, green and blue. If I turn all those off, there's the actual Quickmask itself, and there's a couple of bits I've missed. I can see little white dots. Okay, I just need to paint in black, so I'm just going to type X and B for brush, and make the brush a little bit bigger and paint in all those little bits that I've missed. So I'm actually painting on the Quickmask channel this time with red, green and blue turned off. Spacebar to move around a bit. Just fix these tiny little bits. Zoom out a bit. Command minus. Command 0. Let's see the whole thing. And then let's turn red, green and blue back on in the channels palette. And there it is. Going to save that. Again, progress save. I've already given it a name, so I'm just going to go save. And if I type Q, I have a selection. I can actually save that selection. I can go up here and I can go save selection, and I'll just call it helicopter selection. A really imaginative name. Click OK, and it actually saves that channel, that helicopter selection. If I turn off red, green and blue and turn on helicopter selection, it's just what I had before, but it's actually saved it this time. So if I deselect all this by going Command D and I can turn off the helicopter selection. There's my image. Helicopter selection looks like that. Without RGB it just looks black and white. And I'll just save this image. So next time I open this Photoshop file and I open the channels palette, that helicopter selection will be there. So it'll probably look like that until I come to the channels palette. So if I ever want to load up the selection of this helicopter again, all I've got to do is come into the channels palette and turn it on, and there it is. So what I'm going to do now is just get rid of the background. Now you can't quite see on the screen here, but I've hovered the mouse over the top and a little yellow box has popped up and it says load channel as selection. So I'm going to click on that thing, and what should happen is we'll get the marching ants around the helicopter like that. I can just go Command C. I'll just go up here to the menu, copy. The helicopter is in memory now, not the background, and I can go over to my other picture, which is my wind farm, and I can go Command V and paste my helicopter in. Now I'm just going to move it down onto the roadway a bit using the arrow key for that, and I might want to make it a little bit smaller perhaps, and I can do that by going up here to the edit menu and going free transform or Command T. That puts a sort of box around it with some handles, and I'm just going to hold the shift key and grab one of the corners and make it a bit smaller. If I don't hold the shift key down, it'll get stretched too far in either the horizontal or vertical direction, so I might pop it about there somewhere. When I'm happy with that, I'll just hit the enter key. And we need a little bit of shadow underneath because it looks a bit weird. It looks like it's not actually sitting on the road. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a new layer. I've got layer 2. I'm just going to pull it down underneath layer 1, and using a black brush, so I'm just going to default these to black and white. I can either click D on my keyboard or just click this little black and white thing down the corner. I'm going to get a fairly large brush for this job, so B for brush, and I'll do a right mouse button click, make it fairly big, and I don't want to make it too hard, so soft edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a bit of painting on the road, just a bit like that. Go back to the actual layer and drop the opacity down a bit. It's on 100% at the moment, it's way too much. And I can do that kind of thing. Maybe make another layer above it. Do the same thing again, except this time I'm going to drop the opacity of my actual paintbrush. So instead of 100%, I might make it back to about 35 or something like that. Maybe a smaller brush. And just a little bit of shading under this landing skid. Like that. That sort of thing, maybe a little bit bigger. A little bit more for the body. A bit for the tail. Something like that. Maybe I can erase that too, so just grab an eraser, E for erase. Don't want this very hard at all. Bigger, and I'm just going to erase some of this stuff from the background because it looks a bit weird. Eraser tool I want. Oops, that brush is way too hard. Let's try again. Hardness down to 0. Bigger brush. And then I can just start erasing some of this stuff back out again. I just don't want this to look too odd, too weird. Anyway, you could do a little bit more work on this to try and get the shadows looking fairly natural. And that's pretty much it.